Coming up on this episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover.
I feel like the prime of our defense was kind of wasted. Like, we had so many elite defensive years, and then the offense couldn't hold up their end of the bargain. I do have faith that we kind of can keep that ball rolling on defense and finally have an offense that can hold up its end of the bargain.
Welcome back to Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. It's that time of the offseason again as we kickstart our NFL division previews, and we're going to start with the NFC South. This is the first in 8 preview episodes for each of the divisions as we lead into the 2026 NFL season, each one with a guest to focus on their team, specific team in the division. And we're going to be focusing on the New Orleans Saints. We've got a fantastic guest joining us. We'll get to that in a second. I'm, of course, joined by the usual suspects, Byron and Joe. Gentlemen, how are you both doing? Gripped by World Cup fever. End of the group stage today, I think, is it? As we're recording. Today, tomorrow. England play tomorrow, don't they? So, yeah. Yeah. How are you getting on? You've been enjoying the action so far?
Love the start. I think the group stage has got kind of worse as it's gone along, truthfully. I can't wait for the knockouts to start now because it feels like the group's kind of petered out as we watch Scotland. Hopes peter out of getting to the knockout stage. As well as World Cup fever, I also got COVID fever again. So I've been battling through it this last couple of weeks. But yeah, fighting fit. And can you believe that we're on to division previews already? It can't wait. It means football is maybe right around the corner is pushing it, but I love this time of year. We get to talk football again. It's been a while since we've had actual football to talk about, so let's dig in. Cannot wait.
Yeah, it feels like we have that little break after the Super Bowl for like 4 or 5 weeks, don't we? Before we then have kind of like the free agency preview. It feels like that was like 2 weeks ago when we kind of got back and started, and now we're kind of the height of the off season in terms of kind of the countdown to kick off. But Joe, how are you doing? How is everything in Canada?
Yeah, everything's good. Obviously, everyone's pumped up with Canada getting through for the first time. So they knock out and playing, finishing second and getting South Africa is not a bad draw. Like going into it favourites. They have to play in LA though. Unfortunately, they didn't like work out, so they could play in Canada. They would have had to have won the division. But you know, all the home nations are flying. To be honest, that's always fun. And yeah, some interesting ties coming up. But like Byron said, that's one football. We're here to talk about the other one, which is always fun to do. Where you just once the draft and free agency is done, you forget, and then you dive back into it's like, oh yeah, forgot about this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of interesting off-season discussions to have for each one of these teams.
Excellent. Well, let's get into one of these teams. We've got the New Orleans Saints first. That's our team in focus. We've got Amanda joining us, aka Cooter Doodle, Fantasy Life staff writer. So yeah, make sure you go following Amanda at Cooter Doodle. Follow Fantasy Life at MB Fantasy Life as well for all of her work and write-ups and fantasy content. But let's jump in. Let's talk Saints with Amanda. Kicking off our NFC South preview, we're going to be focusing in on the New Orleans Saints. We've got a fantastic guest to help us do so. We've got Amanda joining us, a.k.a. Cooter Doodle. Amanda, thank you for joining us. First of all, how are you doing? Welcome to Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover.
I'm happy to be here. And look, anytime I get to talk about the Saints, I'm not going to turn that down. So I appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you coming on. You're a staff writer at MB Fantasy Life. Tell us a little bit about kind of your work, your background, first of all, before we do talk about your beloved Saints.
Yeah, I mean, really quickly, I kind of joined Twitter back in 2020 as just an escape from the world. And somehow here I am writing for Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, and I am riding that ride as long as I can. I'm having a blast. We do the weekly buy, sell, hold articles and all kind of stuff. They've kind of given me free reign. So I've been having a lot of fun.
Excellent. And we'll make sure, first of all, you go and follow Amanda at Cooter Doodle. We'll pop that in the episode description. And Matt Berry, Fantasy Life, go follow at MB Fantasy Life on X and the other social media channels as well. And before we do get into talking about the Saints, I saw a post of yours on X a couple of days ago, earlier this week. We should probably talk about it. Mm-hmm. Amanda, if that's all right. Because not many people do this, or you understand you're a keen golfer, and not too long ago, or it's been recently the anniversary of a very special moment. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, it might have been 14 years ago, but on June 25th, 2012. I did hit a hole in one and nobody's talking about it. So I'm glad you brought it up here. This is the first podcast to officially cover it, you know?
It might get
Absolutely. Of all the things we could go into, it might. But we're all about exclusives here at Good Teams and Great Teams Cover. And as a terrible golfer myself, can appreciate just how difficult it is to do that. How many times do you replay the moment and replay the shot?
Oh, I mean, every year on the anniversary, my kid told me, anniversaries are for weddings, not for that. And I was like, I don't think you understand. This is pretty important.
Absolutely. There's only one first holding one. And for many people, there will only be one. In fact, for most people, there won't be any, I guess. So, any closer? Do you think there's going to be another one in your near future, Amanda?
No, but every time I hit at a par 3, I do pull like the watch this before I hit, just in case it happens again.
Excellent. And what do we do? Have we still got the club, the balls in its own little display case? I see.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right behind you? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Next to your Falcons hat.
I lost a bet.
Okay.
We can talk about it later. Yeah.
Excellent.
Saints fan. But yes, go Falcons. I lost a bet.
We will not let you go without letting us know about that. Although I'm also not a Saints fan. I'm not a Saints fan, but have the fleur-de-lis behind us. My partner is a big New Orleans Saints fan, so plenty of Saints talk in this house. But let's get to the Saints talk for now, because that's what we're here to do. And we'll kick off with just a bit of a, I suppose, overview of 2025. Probably a season of two halves. That's such a lame phrase, I know. But it started off obviously with a bit of a struggle first year under Kellen Moore. I think the Saints started off 1-7, and then there's a lot of momentum sort of at the back end after Tyler Shough gets the starting job, or gets his go at the starting job at quarterback. How did you kind of assess the season, Amanda, for kind of how the Saints went in 2025?
If you're a Saints fan, it's been like years coming to this point where you feel hopeful again. And I keep telling everyone, finally, I am letting myself feel a little hopeful, because the last might have been almost 3 or 4 years now, probably at least 3. I'm like so nervous to get hopeful. Even 2 seasons ago, Derek Carr, when we came off of those like 2 wins with the Cowboys, I think the Panthers, and people were like, they might be Super Bowl bound. I let myself get a little excited, and I shouldn't have, because then we lost 7 in a row. But now I feel safe. I'm like sticking out, my head from the ground, and I think we have a shot at looking okay. I really do. And the numbers here, 6-11, 4th in the NFC South. I mean, I don't think it paints the picture of who we are moving into 2026.
And I suppose that was a big part of 2025, kind of the hope that 2024 started off, put 40 on the Panthers and then the Cowboys, which is our team. And then, 6 or 7 weeks later, Dennis Allen's fired. What's kind of been the biggest difference for you in terms of kind of that end of Dennis Allen period to kind of where the Saints are now under Kellen Moore?
It's been nerve-wracking as a fan, because it felt like there's that fan base momentum where everything's it's almost teetering on excuses. It was Dennis Allen, it was Derek Carr, and there's, truth and some smoke to some of that fire. But at the same time, it's nice to finally feel like the cohesion is back as a fan base, and we're all looking forward to what we have. And I know that everyone's really excited about Tyler Shough. And so having Achane on the team now, moving forward, I think this is a first year that as a fan, like analysis aside, as a fan, that I felt everybody's kind of united and hopeful going in.
And certainly feels like that's certainly always a big key for the Saints around that fan base is such a weapon in terms of being able to make the Superdome a real scary place to go for visiting teams, and it feels like that's coming back and around. Let's get into, I suppose, then our sort of headlines for the Saints, and kind of one of them you've just touched on. Shuck it and see. The Saints are rolling with Tyler at quarterback after an impressive rookie year. Will they show some love to their number 1 wide receiver by offering Olave a new contract? Let's just get into Tyler Shough first. The difference from, and it feels harsh, Spencer Rattler was never going to be the answer. He started the season last year. How exciting was it for you watching kind of Tyler Shough showing you what he could do last year?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it's been nice to see, like you have here, like Chris Olave be Chris Olave again. You know what I mean? That in its own right is like super igniting as a fan. And just from the stat point, like you have Shuck who was throwing touchdowns to like Mason Tipton and Kevin Austin. And now he has a rookie coming in with Tyson, this new rookie. So he's got weapons. I'm not worried about that side of things. And that I think is where I'm most excited, because when you look at Shuck, what he did do where he might have not had the best weapons, and now they have just surrounded him, even with Achane, who he was doing some receiving work before he came here. And so I'm kind of curious to see how the Saints move in that realm with Achane as well. I know we'll talk about him later, but yeah, I love that Chris Olave is Chris Olave again.
Yeah, and it feels like kind of whoever's been playing quarterback, Olave still kind of managed to get his. He's just such a good option that he will kind of make it work regardless. But now somebody's there who is very capable of getting him the ball, as we saw at stages last year. It feels a little bit exciting. Byron, for you, kind of, what impact do you think, kind of how the impact to Shuck, and where do you think they can take it, I suppose, to start with this year?
I mean, for Chris Olave, as we're talking here, I think, the ceiling is as high as most any wide receiver in the league. Obviously, you fantasy head, just like I am, and I think Olave finished as wide receiver 6 last year. I don't think a repeat of that is out of the question. He set a new high in yardage last year, 1163. He also got 9 touchdowns last year. He'd got 10 in his prior 3 seasons combined. If you take just his Tyler Shuck games, his rate would have been 112 catches, 13, 26, and 10 touchdowns. Like, I don't think a 1,200-yard season's out of the realm of possibility. 100-plus catches isn't out of the realm of possibility. It's obviously the best connection they've had since Drew Brees and Michael Thomas. So, yeah, I'm really optimistic. I think they're going to pay Chris Olave because, the Saints have kicked the can down the road for years. It was always a thing people beat them over the head with. And I think they're kind of at this point now where it's like there isn't really anyone. That dead money's largely gone. I think all of it's pretty much gone, in fact. And, there's no one else really to pay at this point. Obviously, Tyler Shuck, he might be 30 years old, but he's still a rookie in his second year. Derek Carr's money's gone. They're not going to take a quarterback anytime soon, hopefully, because Tyler Shuck, we'll see, I guess. But, the future should be really bright. We've seen on the prior screen there, the Saints were 28th in points per game. But if you take the last 6 games of the season, they would have been 15th in points per game. Once Tyler Shuck got his legs under him, he only made 9 starts. So, yeah, I think the Olave-Shuck connection is very real. And as we're going to see on the next page, even more mouths to feed as well, which is only a good thing.
Yeah, excellent. It feels like every time we make the Tyler Shuck his old gag, the number just seems to go up in terms of what age we say he is.
He's going to catch me soon.
Yeah. He's too far away from saying he's going to be 50. Let's go on to the next part then. And Amanda, for you, kind of on draft night, kind of with the way that the board was falling, John Tyson out of Arizona State seems the player that was selected by the Saints. What was your initial reaction? Is this a pick that really, really excites you in terms of the potential and possibilities?
It does. And the funny thing is, if you would have asked me before draft night, I would have been like, stay away. The hamstring injury, he didn't participate in the combine. I want nothing of this. But now that they drafted him, I mean, look, I'm a loyal fan. I'm like, that's my guy who had a hamstring injury. That's my guy who didn't participate in the combine. I'm ready to see what he can do. You know what I mean? So I'm hopeful. I hope what we need is just full health all around, which who wouldn't say that for their own team, right? But I'm excited to see, kind of like you said, with the idea of this good connection finally with Olave and Shuck. And then now we have an additional weapon. We don't have to see him throwing to these, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4s. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I say we as part of kind of a UK football media part. We got to speak to one of John Tyson's former colleagues at Arizona State. One of the wide receivers in the wide receiver room there who had nothing but glowing things. You'd expect that, right? Obviously being, teammates, but he had nothing but kind of glowing things to say about kind of the example that John Tyson would set, the work rate, the ability, but just kind of more than the elite mentality and, just the standards he was setting. So it kind of feels like the Saints have got a good one there. Again, we will talk, I think we'll touch on this a lot probably throughout this episode, but again, from a fantasy perspective, I suppose, we just talked a little bit of Chris Olave. Is there a potential negative impact on Chris Olave's fantasy outlook, do you think, Amanda? Tyson, does this open it up because of the threat that Tyson can be?
I think that's a good question. And I know sometimes we kind of want to be cautious, but I mean, the Saints ranked 13th in the league in passing yards per game last season with what they have, which again was Olave. We love him, but they didn't have much after that, right? And so now I think it opens up that passing game even more. Not to mention they've added even Juwan Johnson, my goodness, you know what I mean? Like he's a threat down the field too, where I think this whole offense, like I said, I hate to say it, but I think I'm getting excited, guys. Like I think I am. And so I'm letting myself think that we have a shot to even just win the division and go further than we've kind of had the chances to do in quite some time.
Yeah. And it kind of, again, not to talk too much about the recent past, but that initial hot start under kind of the Gary Kubiak offense in 2024 that kind of then slowed down. A lot of that was due to injuries, right? I think Rashid Shaheed had a particularly bad injury that year, Derek Carr. So that kind of slowed it all down. How much better place do you think they are kind of with now the version of things that Kellen Moore's running with his hot offense? Obviously, he's been around the league, Dallas, LA, Philly, different kinds of offenses running in different ways. Again, how do you think this kind of a unit on offense is shaping up now for him to attack with?
Right. I mean, you kind of hit it, and not to be like cliche, but it feels like a little bit like a gumbo mix, right? We've got all these pieces. Can we just mix it all together? And Dwayne McFarland at Fantasy Life said the Saints is one of those potential NFL offenses for like a profile for a breakout in a fantasy football way because of these things, right? We've got year number 2 on Shuck. He's not the rookie anymore. We've got the influx of weapons. We've got the coaching kind of situation where I feel like even with the draft, I mean, if you ask a Saints fan, there's been times where it seems like we might be holding on to too much, or we double down on mistakes that we've made in the past with some players. And so it feels like we're kind of breaking that just a little bit, and he's forging his way, Kellen Moore. And so I'm excited to see, like, that's what you want, right? You want a coach that's going to say, look, I'm confident in what I'm doing and I want to do it my way. And then you see everyone saying, okay, let's give you a shot, and it's working. So yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Excellent. And let's we'll round off, I suppose, the conversation of the offense. We kind of alluded to it already. Travis Etienne, sorry, got to get it right. He's told us. But Etienne phones home. We'll make that work for that gag. And Travis Etienne returns to Louisiana on a 4-year, $52 million deal. Will it be a compliment to Alvin, or is this Lights Kamara exit? It feels really bad to say. Alvin Kamara is so well loved, not just in New Orleans, but I think across the league. I think he's obviously well respected. But it does certainly feel like the numbers also suggest slowing down. You know, maybe the style of runner that he has been, and a lot of wear on the tires, let's say, to be nice for Alvin Kamara. How do you think this backfield's going to work now? Kind of Etienne's there as well, and with the other options the Saints have got.
Right. And that's what I'm curious of, because like Etienne wasn't the guy that we really thought was a receiving threat up until last year, which was, I mean, he had, 6 touchdowns receiving, 300 yards, I believe, 36 receptions. And then prior to that, the 3 years before that, I think he only had 1 receiving touchdown. So if we utilize him in that way, that does kind of take over that Alvin Kamara role a little bit. There's rumors now that like Kamara might be, being eyed by Green Bay. So I don't know. I think he wants to finish as a Saint. It just really depends on what the coaching and staff want to do. But we just signed Cam Jordan. And so I think like maybe there's this tribute to like keeping him on for now. I guess it depends on what they can get for him. I don't know. Yeah.
And there's probably that balance, isn't it? And maybe it's one for closer to near the trade deadline in kind of November. In kind of where the Saints are, where other teams are that might have a need, for kind of some, and someone experienced potentially. With that kind of Travis Etienne seems to have kind of all round probably his best year, arguably maybe certainly 23 maybe for the Jags, but certainly a strong year. Again, what are you expecting him to bring to the party in New Orleans? Oh,
I mean, I think he opens up the offense even more. Like we just said, we have these weapons for receiving purposes, but now they're going to have to respect, just like they always have with Kamara, the run. I think Kamara, if he stays here, he's still going to be a part of this offense, right? Obviously, but I'm curious to see. I mean, we're paying him, follow the money, 4-year, $24 million deal, $12 million bonus, I believe. So he's going to be a huge part of this offense. I personally, when I do fantasy though, I kind of like separation of church and state. I won't be drafting Travis Etienne just because I want to be able to root for him and not be upset if things don't go my way. So as much as I love him for fantasy, I won't be drafting him for those like purposes that are just very personal to my heart,
I was going to ask, so on Underdog right now, you've got Etienne is going at 30 and Chris Olave has gone 29. So I was going to ask which one were you taking, and I guess the answer is neither. So that's a really quick answer, so thank you for that.
Well, I've even had people, Jake Trowbridge, I don't know if you know Jake from Fantasy Life. He sent me a dynasty in our Fantasy Life dynasty trade he wanted to give me Shuck and Olave, and he's like, look, put your money where your mouth is kind of thing, because he was testing the waters there, but I couldn't give up Puka. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. As much as I say that, I try my best to not draft Saints players. And in my home league, I'll never get them anyways because they go way too early. So
yeah, I'm sure they're not going Olave and Etienne aren't going 29 and 30
no.
in those home leagues for sure. But that's also some very sound advice I think that we should all take for our fantasy football teams in terms of having that separation. Really just trying to see it for what it is and not having that team bias. But it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Really hard to do sometimes. Excellent. Okay, let's have a look then. On the other side of the ball, we've just talked all offense, really. Let's talk defense a little bit to finish off kind of the offseason headlines. Cam Jordan's last dance. Saints all-time sack leader returns for year 16 after a 10.5 sack season. But are the Saints asking too much of a 37-year-old cornerstone? I think that's been in our sort of all the way since we've kind of been going through the offseason, the question that we've asked a lot around the Saints, particularly defensively, is around, it feels like it's been an older unit. We've seen others leave, Demario Davis, sadly, when it's gone back to the Jets. But even things like Tyrann Mathieu, recently retired in the last couple of years, feels like it's been a lot of older guys, a lot of veteran leaders have kind of rather a lot older now, or they've then left. How do you kind of think the balance of the defense? Is there enough young talent there you think that can take a step up, or is it still missing maybe a bit of veteran presence?
Cam's one of those, like, I feel like enigmas. When you're in the dome and they call his name out, when the game starts, it's going to constantly erupt because he's such a huge part of the story of the Saints. You know what I mean? And so having him here, I feel like has to be, if we're feeling that as fans, it has to be the same in the locker room. And I think that's such a huge pivotal point look, last season, like he was putting up some numbers that were very similar to his rookie year. Like he was, I know we're saying like he's old and aging, but at the same time, he was surprising a lot of Saints fans last season. We were so happy to see it because we love Cam. So I think even just having him there for the new guys that we're drafting in, to be that presence and kind of coach them and have that locker room where it needs to be, I think can only be beneficial, even though I know there's, the talking point of age, but I think there's something to that still, having that locker room presence and having that leader who, again, didn't look so bad last year, Yeah,
definitely. Excellent year, a bit of a resurgence. And there is absolutely something in teaching, younger guys what it means to be a Saint as well, and the responsibility of playing for that team and playing for that franchise. We'll talk, I suppose in the moves we'll talk about it a little bit, but Demario Davis mentioned again. Sad to see Demario Davis go. Caden Ellis is an interesting player they brought in. Was it the Falcons? It's gone, then kind of crossed over to the Saints. But he's had a real strong couple of years for the Falcons. Again, what kind of impact are you hoping that someone like Caden Ellis is going to make on this defense?
Oh, look, what's funny is our defense, and it's not funny, but I feel like the prime of our defense was kind of wasted. Like we had so many elite defensive years, and then the offense couldn't hold up their end of the bargain. You know what I mean? For whatever reasons, whether it was quarterback issues, but I do have faith that we kind of can keep that ball rolling on defense and finally have an offense that can hold up its end of the bargain. To give you a quick little side story, if you don't mind, real quick though. One time we were leaving a Saints game, and we had gone to a casino right by after, and so it's real late. The game has been over, and we're walking some back street behind the Superdome, and Cam Jordan and Davis are both right there. And my husband and I wanted to go say hi, but we didn't. But we were just like, you don't realize how big these guys are. You know what I mean? Like, just seeing them in their suits after the game, and we're just walking down the street, and I was just like, yeah, being in those seats in the dome, definitely, you know, that distance makes them seem like normal humans, but they're absolute monsters. But that's I'm getting off topic, but my point being, I do think our defense can, with these additions, hopefully start to kind of get back to that elite form. And you know what? I am biased, but I'm going to say it. I think they will.
Excellent. And it just feels like you just after that complementary offense and defense now, kind of, you mentioned kind of one side's been carrying it. You know, the defense have kind of been there, been strong, and the offense has not kind of held up their end of the deal. Can you get a bit of parity now and a bit of balance across the two units? And we also do need to mention the third unit as well, because that's one probably a little bit closer to our hearts, being over here. Charlie, we've got to talk about Charlie Smith a little bit, if that's okay. Not part of our kind of headlines to discuss. It's a bit of a breakout for Charlie. He's an international player on the International Pathway Program from Ireland. Ends up getting the kicker job and the back end of the season. And for us, from what we could see, done a really, really good job. Thinks our Blake Groupie had been a bit hit and miss for the Saints. Charlie finally got his chance. What's the general feeling from Saints fans on kind of, Charlie Smith as the kicker was kind of the Irish lad making his way in the game?
Oh, he's one of ours now. I mean, like, it's one of those situations where I know we kind of joke in fantasy, like some people will say kickers don't matter, and then, you know, they'll get frustrated with that. But, oh, man, as a Saints fan, to have someone reliable, which I feel like we've been up and down with that position for a hot minute, he's one of ours. It was so fun seeing, you know, the cutoffs to back home where they're cheering for him in these games. And so, no, I fully embrace it. We all fully embrace it. And I'm excited for that as well moving forward.
Yeah, in the sort of the northern part of Ireland, there is a whole new thousands of New Orleans Saints fans all of a sudden because of kind of Charlie getting his opportunity. And we have a very unique marketing idea, Amanda, for Charlie and for the Saints that we're hopeful you can help us with, maybe push it.
Okay.
We tried pitching it to the Saints. They've not got back to us yet. Byron, do you want to share kind of the T-shirts and ideas we've got for Charlie?
Absolutely. So, I love a good pun, as we know. He's Irish. You know, the Saints, their logo is obviously the fleur-de-lis. So what about the fleur-leaf clover?
Right, yes. I do like that.
See, there we go.
That's fantastic.
Doodle on board, yeah. So I don't know what else we need, but I think that's a good one. You know, tied to some kind of charity, so they have to say yes. It's kind of my view. But, I like the fleur-leaf clover.
I'm on board with that. I like that.
Yeah, well, if you can help us kind of get it to whoever we need to get it to in the Saints marketing department.
Right.
If you need to go have some back alleys by casinos to get in touch with somebody.
I might have to.
You use your prerogative, but I have some ideas.
And we'll cut you in, Amanda, on the cut from the profits of the sales.
25% to us, 25 to Charlie, right. 25 to you, 25 to the charity of his choice.
The charity. Yeah, the Saints don't need anything off from it. So, but also, obviously, we're really excited to see kind of Charlie push on next year as well and really cement that place. And that's going to hopefully, for us selfishly, open up more kind of opportunities for these international pathway players in the league. And it's making a real good go of it so far. Let's talk about then the key transaction. So apologies for taking us off topic there. We've talked a little bit around some of the ins and outs as well. So we've talked about ETN coming in, Caden Ellis as well in free agency. The couple that the other wanted to touch on was around, again, probably the development of this offensive line. So I think David Edwards come in from Buffalo as a guard option. But that offensive line seems pretty set. There's a lot of kind of high draft picks, first rounders, second rounders that are making up that offensive line. Just how much does it feel like a big strength for the Saints, Amanda?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but like Shuck was starting to run a little bit last season. We got to see it wasn't like phenomenal in the sense of he's not like that threat in fantasy on his legs at this point. But I think in the final 7 games, he might have had 3 rushing touchdowns and, 150 yards or so. And so that is only going to help with that. He's quick on his feet. He's moving. So as long as they protect him and he can kind of get that ball moving, I think it's hard to not be hopeful with all these additions that they've made and all these different areas, around the ball. So I know I'm biased, but it feels good.
Yeah, excellent. And it just feels like they're such a strength. They've built it through the draft the right way.
Mm-hmm.
It's Kelvin Banks and Fuaga, the bookends, the first round picks. Cesar Ruiz, how strong he is, and with McCoy as well. And then there's David Edwards to add to that as well. And then they've taken a bit of a flyer. So Tyree Wilson, I think he was a top 10 pick for the Raiders back in 2024, was it? Yeah. I think he was maybe 7th overall. He just didn't work out, did not take off at all. I think he was from Texas Tech. Any hope kind of that the Saints can have some sort of like reclamation project here and get something out of Tyree Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've had guys we've let go with the Saints and then they go off and have better careers elsewhere. So I think that can happen with, any player, whether it's coaching changes or maybe they needed that kind of shakeup to kind of really lock in. I don't know. But yeah, we've seen it happen. I remember my husband talking about it. It was like, man, I wish we never let that guy go, and now he looks so great on defense. But yeah, I'm hopeful.
I think there's a nice corollary to like Chase Young, who,
Mm-hmm.
Was becoming a bit of a journeyman and bouncing around the league. And then, he comes to New Orleans and has a 10-sack season, which he'd never had in his career. So I think there's some real obvious comparisons you can make there of players who were really hyped coming out of college, didn't quite do it where they were drafted to. And yeah, especially having Cam Jordan back, it relieves the pressure on Tyree Wilson to be an every down star as well. So I think it's one of them just like pure upside moves.
Mm-hmm.
And then just on the departures, we talked about Demario Davis a couple of times leaving. Somebody else who's left, and I think we're all huge fans of Taysom Hill, just the Swiss Army knife nature of Taysom Hill. How much of a miss is Taysom going to be for the Saints?
As a person, obviously, yes, we love Taysom Hill. However, as a player, without Sean Payton, it really wasn't the same Taysom Hill. So I feel like we kind of already mourned some of that loss already. As much as, again, as a person, I love Taysom. So, yeah, I don't know. In a weird way, it feels like it was just going this direction already.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's, I don't know if somewhere further down the line, maybe there's Taysom Hill and Sean Payton find their way back to each other.
I bet they do. I would put my money on that.
He is surprisingly, he's sneaky old Taysom Hill though. Because he was a Mormon missionary, so like his college career was delayed, etc. He didn't come out until he was 27, so he's 35 already. So yeah, I think when he's off a brutal knee injury before last year, so I think maybe coaching might be more his future than seeing him on the field again, sadly.
So let's move on to the draft then for a few. Again, we've talked about Jordan Tyson. Is there anyone else, or who else is it that you're particularly excited about, Amanda, from kind of this Saints draft? So Tyson's the headline, understandably so, as a top 10 pick, but who else is it that's kind of really exciting you and you're looking forward to seeing come September?
Yeah, I'm really at this point, like I kind of want to go check out the practices and stuff and see it in action, because we try to do that, every offseason. But it's one of those situations where my fantasy mind, I want to see Bryce Lance as well. I want to see the offense and what's the offense going to do. But seeing all the pieces that we've put together, and yet even fantasy wise, the Saints defense might be valuable, might be something to hang on to as well. Yeah,
certainly looking forward to seeing it. I thought Delp was an interesting pick. Byron, I'm not sure kind of from you again, you've kind of got that piece of kind of with Juwan Johnson, Noah Fant obviously come in as well during the off season. But I think Delp's quite an interesting proposition or option. Again, potentially working with Tyler Shuck. Again, big unit, he's 6'5", 250, big impact in the blocking game. But are you expecting to see anything more than that out of Delp?
Not too much, truthfully. I think it is going to be Juwan Johnson as the feature tight end. And again, he's another one who had a career year last year with Tyler Shuck. So he's obviously not as young as he used to be. Who is? I think he's going to be 29 this year. So I don't think there's any reason to push Delp into a role. I think Juwan Johnson's perfectly capable. But I agree on Bryce Lance because obviously, we mourn the loss of Rashid Shaheed, but like I think Bryce Lance is your new, like he will take the top off the defense. I don't know if he's going to work in fantasy necessarily, but in terms of like real life impact, I think he could be great for opening up things for Olave and Tyson. Just, might be a lot of cardio for Bryce Lance, but he's quick enough to do it. So yeah, I'm excited to see if he has any impact like on the field rather than, I guess, fantasy. I don't think I'll be drafting him early, but
you know me, I don't need it to be fantasy relevant. If he just scores while I'm in the dome, I'm a fan,
Yeah. 7 jerseys later.
Right.
He averaged over 21 yards of reception for North Dakota State last season.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
ties to that.
If you're a Scott Fishbowl player, and this year 20-yard receptions get a 10-point bonus. So, 20th round, maybe Bryce Lance is someone to have a little sneaky look at.
That's a good point.
Yeah, one to bear in mind. You just spot that everyone's going to be doing it, and he's going to be that ADP is going to drop dramatically. Yeah, it'll drop whichever way you look at it. All right. Well,
I'm going to go up, but
yeah.
The Byron effect, the ADP crushes out the floor. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's have a look then. We are a gambling show, of course. Let's have a look then. I think, we've not done the rest of the record. I think everyone in the NFC South is over under 7.5 wins. I think all 4 teams are, which kind of tells you kind of what Vegas thinks about kind of where those teams are or how tight the division may be, because it has been for, there's not been, the team winning it's not really won it by much, and we saw a losing record win it last year. Where do the line for the Saints is over 7.5 wins, so kind of that 7-8 win mark. What are you kind of where are you expecting the Saints to get to, Amanda? What do you think kind of a realistic record is for the Saints?
Like I said earlier, with all of these pieces finally in aligned, and we aren't in that growing year necessarily, we have a year under our belt with Chuck. I mean, why couldn't we push 9-10 wins? The Saints have, even if you look at last season, there were so many that came down to a missed kick or something so close, which again, why we love Charlie so much. But when we finally got him, but it's the idea of we were so close and we had 6 wins and we had a lot of things not really going for us. So I think for me, it's an easy over on this, but like you said, it's going to be probably a tight division.
Yeah. I think 10-13. So just it's that minus 130, 140 probably. Yeah. Depending how you choose to have your odds. For over 7.5 wins, even money, or plus 100 for under. I suppose the question: do you think the Saints can kind of take control and win the division? Because I'm probably struggling to see a wild card team coming out of the NFC South again. I think it'd be a one division bid or one team bid from the division. Do you think they've got enough to take control of the South and win it?
I think they do, because if you really sat down and looked at every single team, there's an argument that each one could take a step forward and be the one in the South. So if it's that close, I think the Saints have a chance just as good as any of the others. And I mean, there's question marks, right? We got Bucky Irving, who's hurt. We're not sure what's going on in Tampa Bay. We had Mike Evans left for less money. What's going on there? You know what I mean? So if you really start diving deep, there's a lot of question marks all around in the NFC South. So I absolutely think we have a chance at it.
Yeah, I think that key, just looking for the Saints' last 5 games, division games, 3 of those 4 division games are on the road. It's gonna come down to that stretch, I think. So 4 of the last 5 at Carolina, at Tampa, play the Cardinals, at Falcons, and home to Tampa Bay. Those are the last 5. So it's gonna come down to that. I think we know enough about the NFC South recently to know that it's probably going to come down to that stretch of games, and the Saints are going to be right in the mix based on that. There is a trip to Paris for the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the natural fit for internationally to host a Saints game with kind of the partnerships and the natural fit. I'm going to be going to that game, so very excited to see the Saints at the Stade de France taking on the Steelers. What can Paris expect from the Saints? Kind of with the Saints rolling into town, what can we expect from the Saints in Paris?
Okay, I will tell you this. I went to an away game where we played the Rams, and on our away side of the stadium, they ran out of beer and food.
Yes.
So I'll tell you that much. Be prepared. We do a lot of drinking. We do a lot of eating. So we will be looking for that.
Excellent. I'm coming to the Superdome as well the week, 2 weeks after. We're making a trip, so we're going to watch the Saints in Paris against the Steelers. Then they've got the bye week, and then we're in New Orleans to watch the Saints against the Browns. So I will be asking for some tips, all your tips for New Orleans and the surrounding areas. But very much looking forward to that trip. But yeah, can't wait to kind of see people traveling over and see what kind of how the Saints turn Paris, because it should make for a fantastic international series game.
And you have the best of both worlds, because you get to see them away and then you get to see them at home. That's going to be incredible.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We're stacking the trips because we're going to LSU, Alabama as well the day before the Saints game. So we've fallen very lucky. But anyway, we can talk about that when we finish recording. Division, we've mentioned kind of the division. You feel like they can certainly make a play for it. So just under 3-1. You could have got the Saints 3-1 earlier, or plus 300 to win the South, which feels like really, really good value. I kind of, just with that, kind of with where the other teams are, I'm astonished. I still think the Bucs are still favourites to win the division, which is something that just seems completely baffling to me, given where they are, the flux that the state that they're in. How far are you confident the Saints are going to win the NFC South? How far can they go in the playoffs? Can they kind of upset maybe some more of the established teams who've been in the NFC playoffs more recently?
We traditionally will win the ones we shouldn't and lose the ones we should have won. And so anything can happen with the Saints. I will say I did put 10 cents down on them to win the Super Bowl with the with plus 9,000 odds, So scared money don't make money. I like to have my fun little bets, and I'll sweat it out as long as I can.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you're looking, so 35-1 to win the NFC, 80-1 or 90-1, depending where you're betting from. But we're 80-1 with bet 365. I suppose the last couple of questions just on the Saints then, Amanda, if that's okay. In your mind, what would be a successful season for the Saints?
A successful season for us, I feel like, would be, even when we lose, which, I mean, it's going to happen, but not having the feeling like it got stolen from us for, we made a mistake on one end of the ball, or we seem to not be aligned, or the play calling seemed to not mesh with what we should have been doing. I feel like if we look like a cohesive unit all around, a loss is a lot easier to digest, and it still would feel successful.
Excellent. That's quite a deal. That's a real culture, a real culture part on the team, which is real cool. Excellent. Amanda, thank you ever so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate your insight on the New Orleans Saints for 2026. Before we let you go again, give us one last shout. Where can we follow you? Where can we follow your work?
Yep, you can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Cooter Doodle, and then you can go to fantasylife.com, subscribe to the newsletter. I write for that, as well as articles every week.
Excellent. Make sure you go and support Amanda, following the work at MB Fantasy Life. And get involved for some great fantasy tips, some betting angles as well. Plenty of stuff to keep up with. We're going to finish off the episode by previewing the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to see what chance they've got in the NFC South. Thanks again there to Amanda for her fantastic insight on the Saints. Make sure you go give Amanda a follow at Cooter Doodle, on X. And also go follow Fantasy Life at MB Fantasy Life for all of Amanda's great fantasy content, and the rest of the guys at Fantasy Life as well. There's great stuff on there that will help you with your fantasy decisions, drafts, lineups, etc. over the course of the season. Let's get into the rest of the South. Then we're going to start with the Atlanta Falcons. 2025 season, 8-9. Finished third in the division, missed the playoffs for the 8th season in a row. 24th in scoring offense, 19th in scoring defense. Was supposed to be the year they figured a lot of things out. They figured one thing out, which is the pass rush, and then everything else just kind of fell by the wayside. Still don't know who they are, what the answer is at quarterback. Still can't really get the best out of all of the skill position players. How would you sort of describe how the 25 season went for the Dirty Birds?
Yeah, I think it was a disappointment. I think how 24 ended, especially with Penix Jr. ending the year, there was some hope. Obviously, he got the injury near the end. But coming into the year, you expected them to make a leap. Obviously, we'll get on to the hirings and firings, but it felt like a wasted opportunity, especially how that defense played. It felt, like you mentioned, they had a pass rush. They actually had a good draft. I know they didn't have many picks, and people could say the price they had to pay for certain players, but who they actually picked for that trade, and also in the later rounds, like Xavier Watts, for example, they hit big on them kind of players. But it was just this offense where it feels like every year it's like this offense has got to be something special just with the talent they have. And the biggest thing was the QB just didn't hold what people expected. So that's where the worry is, and it's and that's where the worry going forward is that QB position, because it felt like after the 2024 years, they might have actually sorted it out. Obviously, took a surprise QB in that draft with his injury history and everything, but he started well. But last year was a bit of a disaster in terms of where they're going in the future and being in this, in this spot where no one wants to be in limbo, where after Matt Ryan, they just haven't sorted it out.
Yeah, I mean, Byron's still shot. They took Michael Penix Jr. at 8 in the 2024 draft. He's still not quite got over it yet. Byron, what's your kind of assessment on the Falcons 25 season?
No, totally agree. And it really felt like they got rolling towards the end. They won the last 4 games in a row. It felt like the offense was really hit a stride, and that was with Kirk Cousins at the helm. And then they released Kirk Cousins, or he got released, right? He ended up on the Raiders anyway, whether it was a trade or a release. I can't quite remember. But yeah, so that was the highlight of the season was they actually ended the season really well. And then they've got rid of Kirk Cousins. We'll get on to the staffing changes. But between 2024, 2025 and into 2026, I don't really know what the Falcons are, other than they haven't been a winning football team thus far. So yeah, we'll get into 26, but 25, I agree with you guys. I just found it a weird season. So
it was a strange one. I think probably it looked like it was starting to come together. They beat the Bills. They beat the Bills to go 3-2 in week 6 on a Monday Night Football game, and that looked like, yeah, this is it. They're getting it together now, and they'll go on a bit of a run. And then they lost 5 in a row, including 2 overtime games, and there's a loss to Miami in there. I lost the Panthers in that. It wasn't great, and then that killed the season. They went from 3-2 to 3-7, and that was kind of any hope kind of extinguished for the year. So yeah, very, very odd. Well, we're gonna, I suppose, try and discover or work out what the Falcons are. To your point, Byron, we don't really know what they are. Well, let's try and put the pieces together. But let's go through kind of the off-season headlines for the Falcons. No Raheeming qualities. Kevin flies south. You see how happy Joe is there, just laughing away in the background. After being fired by the Browns, 2-time coach of the year, moved to Atlanta to take the reins from Raheem Morris. Can the offense take flight in the hands of an offensive guru? We've talked about they've got the pieces. Well, they've got the skill pieces in the wide receivers and the running back. In a tight end that seems to kind of be getting there. How big a job here is Kevin Stefanski got? And is he the right person to turn this offense into something?
I've put my chips on him ahead of Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, who I think done a pretty terrible job, all things considered, in their time in Atlanta. So, yeah, I think Stefanski's showing that when he has any kind of weaponry, he works pretty well. Even with poor quarterback play, I think the offenses in Cleveland haven't been great, but I think they've, probably been about as good as some of their parts you could expect, really, when you look at the level of quarterback play. I think the quarterback play, again, will be an issue, but I think Stefanski's got to be able to piece things together. Their top 3, the wide receiver, tight end, running back, I'm not sure there's many teams that you would take their 1, 2, 3 over the Atlanta Falcons. It's just going to be a case of getting them in a system that works for them, and your peripheral pieces on the outside of those 3 players are going to have to step up a little bit throughout the season, because it's impossible to expect, those players to put 33% of an offense each, because as good as they are, you do need your wide receiver 2s, your 3s, 4s, your tight end 2, 3s, etc. to step up. They've lost, obviously, Tyler Algier as a backup, who I thought done pretty well backing up Bijan, but, these 3 are elite fantasy produce for a reason. Every week, they're always in consideration for, fantasy game day, even at their high price points, because they do dominate targets. I think Stefanski will still lean into that. And, Stefanski is a mug. He's 2-time coach of the year for a reason. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good hire for them. So should be.
And is that part of the reason, do you think, a little bit of maybe why Stefanski was the guy? Like, he's never really been settled from a quarterback position in his time in Cleveland, and yet he's managed to produce a couple of winning teams out of kind of that mess. And is that kind of the task, what the Falcons are tasking him with again? Like, you work it out. We don't have the answer. We don't know what the answer is. You go work out with what we've got.
Yeah, I would say I would flip it as well, though, is that it felt like Kevin Stefanski was one of the hottest head coaches after being fired from the Browns with his head coach of the year. That there was a lot of teams after him. So the fact that he chose the Falcons, he could have gone elsewhere. He could have gone to a number of different teams, but he chose the Falcons. And I think it's mainly because of the players they've got. Because when you compare like them against the Browns in any of the Browns' heyday, they're probably, Drake London's probably as better as any other wide receivers has been at the Browns. Stefanski, Bijan's probably just above Chubb. There, they've got a decent O-line, maybe not as good as the Browns one, but actually, and it's the quarterback is a big issue. But he never really had I know Baker Mayfield's certainly come on strong now, but he wasn't quite Baker then at the Browns. So I think it's good for both teams. As soon as Kevin Stefanski came on there, I thought a lot of teams would be after him, and the fact that Falcons got him was great on their side. I'm curious because he's brought in a few other tight ends. You mentioned Kyle Pitt. He does love to play two tight ends, and he's got a few of his in. So I wonder how he'll play with that. With Bijan, will he be able to get the kind of productivity he had with Chubb, the kind of seasons he had, which I think he will be able to do. You just hope that, we talked about the Falcons defense, can they just sustain, because a lot of the Stefanski teams we think about, which did well, also had a stout defense. I think that can't be lost, especially the one with Joe Flacco. That defense then was one of the best, especially at home. I know we had the home away split was always good. But so the Falcons need to keep up that, because you don't want to get into a situation where you're expecting Penix or whoever is the quarterback to be to be chasing high scores, because I think that's where they fall down into traps and interceptions come around.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite stats to pull out every week for a while. That the Browns defense at home versus on the road, give up 13 average at home and 35 on the road, or whatever it was. Right, let's move on there to headline number 2. The next bit. We've just talked about some of these guys, but birds of a feather get paid together. The Falcons tie down key offensive pieces as Drake London for 4 years and $141 million, and Kyle Pitts 3 years, $54 million, ink new deals. Let's start with Pitts, because that's also the most recent one that's been done. He was franchise tag. They've worked out a deal. Where do you kind of think that kind of fits in kind of the wider world of tight ends? Have they got a good deal for it? Have they got good money for him? Are you expecting him to kind of keep on growing and keep producing a little bit more? Where do you think kind of they're at with Kyle Pitts? Joe?
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's a tricky. I think both of these ones are. I think with Kyle Pitts, the problem is that it's always the potential's there, and it always feels like, this year Kyle Pitts is suddenly going to become that dominant tight end we always expect. I had an inkling that they may have let him go if Kevin Stefanski didn't come in. Like I mentioned, the tight ends, he loves his tight ends, and so bringing Kyle Pitts in for that kind of money makes sense. I think if it wasn't Kevin Stefanski, I think they may have let him go, just because he has been, when you think about the whole experience, a disappointment. Where he was drafted, what was expected of him, and when you look at a lot of the tight ends which have been getting drafted the last few years, who have hit the ground running and been monster numbers, it never feels like Kyle Pitts has reached that pinnacle. And I'm curious what you guys think about the Drake London, because I've seen a few people mention that he might be slightly overpaid, being the third highest wide receiver. When you actually break down his numbers, it's always that thing where it's like, well, he's just getting paid now. The next 10 people are going to get paid, and he's going to be the 11th in probably a year or two. But it's still a lot of money for. But he is their main weapon, so I also can't blame them.
Drake London's an interesting one. So he's had 1,000-yard receiving season in his 4 years since he came out of USC. He was a top 10 draft pick, right? He went when they had that run of 8. They were picking number 8 every single year. I don't know, it just seemed a lot to me. I know his injury's part of that. I mean, he only played 12 games last year, so you look at that, he had 900 yards in 12 games. So, you put that up, but that's probably, 13 I try to do the maths, but it's probably like a 1,300-yard receiving season, right? Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It does seem a lot, but it's also kind of, do you let him kind of, how do you do it? Do you end up going down the tag routes? Do you walk, see who else you can get? Is there anybody else going to come on the open market? Maybe George Pickens next year? I don't know. I think it's a tough position, and I suppose there's an element of you've also got to back yourself that you were right taking London as a top 10 pick, I guess, as well. So yeah, also, these things, getting them done earlier also helps you, but yeah, it does seem a lot. Where are you buying with kind of the two contracts and what it does for the Falcons?
No problem with the Drake London signing. It is a lot of money, but like you say, give it time and he'll be the 5th highest paid or with 10th highest paid. It's just the order that they get paid in that really matters. The Falcons have gone into 2027, have the 2nd highest amount of cap space right now after they've signed Drake London, after they've signed Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, I'm a little up and down on as a player, but Titans are so cheap that, why not? You're looking, Drake London's what, 40 million a year, roughly 30 million a year. Kyle Pitts is half of that. And he's the 3rd most high paid tight end per year in the league right now, behind Kittle and McBride. So I don't want to say you've no option, but you look at the depth chart behind these players and you just pay them, because I don't know who else the Falcons are paying anyway. And Drake London's been really good. Like you say, would have been a 1,300-yard last year if he played all 17 games, probably. He gets so many targets for offense, 1,200 plus a year before. So I have no qualms with paying either of them. It's just, it's a good problem to have. It'd be a good problem to have too many players to pay, but I think they just have to go with the ones they have right now and pay them, rather than letting it get out of hand like we've seen with other teams, Dallas, namely.
Yeah, just a quick one on Kyle Pitts. I think I might give this away in the chat. I think we've talked about it before, maybe. Obviously, he's entering his 6th year.
Yeah.
I would love to see a price on Kyle Pitts, exactly 6 receiving touchdowns. His chart so far in his 5 years has been year 1 receiving touchdown, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. I want to see that price. It's going to be a big price, right? Exactly.
I wonder how many years he has to go to get the receiving record of touchdowns.
Yeah, if he ends up a 20-year career, he's going to end up having the... Yeah, but yeah, so there's no that market. It's 5 plus or 10 plus, but he's not in the list. I'm just having a look, so I have to shift to
over 507.
Yeah, over 507. Yeah, but yeah, worth exploring, I think, for Kyle Pitts. See if you can request about that, and we'll certainly be tracking that during the season. Every time we'll tick one off as he goes. Right, let's go on to our 3rd headline instead of talking about ridiculous bets. That's for much later in the season. The quarterback situation, my God. 2 quarterbacks better than 1. After Penix Jr. failed to grasp opportunity in 2025, Atlanta turned to Tua for competition, while Miami still foot the bill. That's a big part in this, right? We've seen the Raiders are doing it with Kirk Cousins. The Falcons are still... I suppose they are paying for Tua by paying for Kirk Cousins, maybe. I don't know how he works it out. But yeah, obviously Miami are footing the bill for Tua. Atlanta not having to pay much. And I think we talked about this. I'm fully expecting Tua to be starting week 1. Where do you guys think is it a competition, or do you think Stefanski already knows?
I think it's a competition. I don't think Stefanski doesn't have an experience with either of them, so I think he'll want to see them both. I think their physical ability is obviously going to impact a lot of it. Michael Penix hasn't played since he was injured, so we haven't seen him play again. But I think just on what we've seen on the field, obviously Penix is younger, but Tua had a bad year last year, but Tua's performed better in the NFL than Michael Penix has. If I was picking, I would go with Tua. I don't know how pot committed they are to Michael Penix now. It's a new staff. We've seen a couple of years of Penix. I wouldn't be paying him like a franchise quarterback, so I don't think you can treat him one going into this camp battle, and I think it will be. Whoever performs better will get the starting job in week 1, and I believe that'll be Tua, because we've seen Tua run offenses in the NFL before, so we haven't seen Penix do that at a high level yet. So I think Tua should be favourite to start week 1.
And he is. He's 5-9 with Bet365 at the minute to be the starting quarterback week 1. Penix 7-5. So not massive gap between the two of them, but yeah, certainly the favourite. And I think something drastic would have to happen in training camp for for that to change. Joe, kind of where you are, do you think this is the one where we're probably going to see both of them over the course of the season, or do you think two? If it is Tua that starts the year, do you think he can really grasp and make this job his for the long run?
Well, I can see Trevor Siemian getting in as well. That's the thing where it could be. It's because like both of them had the injuries issues. We can skirt around it. Tua has a few years where he stayed fit, but he has these issues with concussions, and unfortunately, it sometimes does continue. Hopefully, fingers crossed he gets lucky. But Penix is coming into this training camp questionable with an injury as well, so he's had his issues. So I think they're going to, it's going to be a rotation. Helps both being left-handed, which I think is fairly cool that the main two left-handed quarterbacks are on the same roster. So there shouldn't be any more complaints about how the balls twirling in the air for one quarterback versus the other. So hopefully everyone should get used to it. But I agree. I think Tua's probably the front runner just because what he's done, and probably Kevin Stefanski could probably trust him a little bit more. But I think it's going to be a full-on battle, and we'll see who steps up. Really, it could be one of them where they both could be shocking in the preseason, and then that's when you do worry as a Falcons fan.
Excellent. Right, let's get into the fourth one. So in the front office more for this one, I think, as opposed to anything on the roster. This one, Atlanta getting back, I suppose, one of their favourite sons in when although it's all done. Yeah, Matt Ryan returning. Matty Ice comes home to shake up front office. Beloved former quarterback leaves TV desk behind for role overseeing football operations, with GM and head coach reporting in. I don't know if any other team or many other teams kind of have this set up. That Matt Ryan's acting as like the go-between Arthur Blank and then the GM and head coach. Is this a sign of maybe Arthur Blank taking a step back? Is this too much sort of management potentially going on with Matt Ryan taking this president of football role that they've got?
It's one of them. I don't really know what to make of it. I think the one thing I do think about it is the Bears got banged because Ian Cunningham went from the Bears to be their GM, and they don't get any minority compensation for it like other teams do, because technically Matt Ryan is the decision maker. But he didn't take a sideways step. He went from being an assistant GM to the GM, and the Bears just got nothing in return for it. So I think that kind of stung. The Matty Ryan of it, I don't really know what to think of it. We'll see, I guess. The decisions he's made so far seem fine, or the team has made seem fine. If things go wrong and things go south and they don't get a quarterback in the next couple of years, then we'll probably look at it as, what the hell were they doing, giving Matt Ryan a gig out of television?
A bit of the new Jeff Saturday. So yeah, but it feels like the Falcons are probably still paying Matt Ryan's contract from 5 years ago. So we're still paying him, so we may as well give him a job since the TV desk wasn't, he did all right, but he wasn't a superstar. So we're paying him anyway. So let's get him to do some fun. I don't know. It feels a bit of a desperation move in a sense. But other places did it. Obviously, the 49ers with John Lynch and a few of us have got people from TV. So I think give it a chance. He knows what he's doing in terms of, he felt like he was that kind of quarterback which knew the game inside out. So fingers crossed he can take that into the back office as well. Because I'm curious. I know what Byron said with what they've done, but I also think this offseason's been a bit weird with the signings and stuff they've done as well. So we'll get to that with the free agency.
Yeah, I wonder if it's supposed to appease the fans a little bit. I don't know, getting a favourite. And I suppose the Broncos did it with Elway, didn't they? And got him in, I suppose, more as a traditional GM, I guess, though. And that led to a bit of, obviously, an upturn in the Broncos' fortunes and led to that Peyton Manning Super Bowl, I guess, in the end. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But just a quirky off-season headline to look at. Let's look at the ins and outs then, too. We've talked about, outside, and we've kind of mentioned it a little bit. That after Drake London, it's a bit thin. Jahan Dotson over from the Eagles. We've got Zachariah Branch. Yeah, I think the wide receiver room looks thin. Do you think this is more, and that might be generous to say that? Is there more can we do? Do you expect to see maybe some training camp cuts or some moves for just a bit more depth? Because it feels light.
I mean, in theory, you'd expect to see a body come in, I guess. I've got Olamide Zacchaeus as well for the Bears came in. slot receiver. So maybe somebody, but I don't think it's going to be a big name. I don't think they're going to swing the fences on anybody. Obviously, they already didn't have a first-round pick this year, so I don't think they're going to be looking to give up any picks next year. So I think it would be a training camp cut if anybody, or one of them veterans, Diggs, Keenan Allen, out there. But I don't think there's going to be a needle mover.
Yeah. And again, I keep banging about the two tight ends. Obviously brought Hooper in. So that was it. But that's just what I mean about this offseason. It's a bit strange, like Barry mentioned in the, how much cap they've got and all that kind of stuff, where when I was looking at what players to put on this free agency, I think Nick Folk was the second average contract, the highest the Falcons gave out this free agency. So it feels like they've lost a few players and they haven't invested that much this year. So it's a very strange offseason. I've seen a few rankings that they're in the bottom 5 in terms of offseason gradings, and just because they've not actually done much to bolster what they've done, especially when they didn't have much draft capital as well.
And Juwan Taylor, again, they need obviously somebody at that right tackle spot, the blind side for the lefty QBs, whichever one it's going to be. Feels important. Obviously, he's bounced around from either the Jags initially to the Chiefs. A year with the Falcons, I feel obviously getting that right is so important because, the nature of it, it's much more important position. But, getting that O-line right, very important as well. And let's have a look then at the draft as my voice is just deciding to go. What did we make of the Falcons draft? Again, the capital limited because of what they gave up to go get James Pierce and what they gave to the Rams, who used that pick very well. What do we make of, I guess, we've got the Terrell brothers. United at my voice is going, sorry guys. Terrell brothers United at the Falcons. Again, kind of that secondary, they hit on some picks the year before. How do you think that's kind of going to fit then with Avion and AJ together?
Well, I mean, if Avion's anything like AJ, then I think it's a smash. I think we largely expected him to go in the first round towards the back end of it. So to get him all the way at 48, I think was a pretty good value for them. The rest, I'll be honest, I'm not too sure about. I don't think there's any starters in there. But, we will see. Defense obviously needed improvements, needed to get younger. Like you said on the last slide, lost Caden Ellis to the Saints. So, I don't think we want to see Perkins starting, Harold Perkins starting year one necessarily as a 6th round pick, but they did need to get younger at linebacker. They brought a lot in between the draft and free agency, but like you're saying here, they didn't have much capital. Got 3 6th round picks on this screen here. I've got Zachariah Branch down as the DT here. The guy's about 5'4", so I don't think he's going to do much at D tackle. He's a wide receiver. I just noticed that there. I was like, hang on, I thought they brought a wide receiver in. Yeah, the Zachariah Branch. I'd love to see him at D tackle. That would be very fun. But
he's 5'10", 180 pounds.
Yeah, I was maybe over exaggerating with 5'4", but I knew he was a little lad. But Terrell, I think there's real reasons for optimism there, and obviously working with his brother, they'll have first grade scouting reports on him. Like they know what his brother is, and he's been one of the better corners in the last few years. So I think there's a reason for optimism there, but I think the rest is really a wait and see. I don't have any high expectation this draft class is going to be contributing outside of Terrell. So
yeah, and it's an interesting story we haven't touched on is obviously the Pierce off season where it felt like he was going to get some prison time, and then obviously giving up all that draft capital, and then having he was the one which really hit out the 2 first round picks last year. So if he had been kicked out of the league and whatnot, then it would have been interesting how their draft board would have gone down if they would have had to target edges again as usual. So, but yeah, like you said, 2 Trails on defense and 2 B Robinsons on offense. They're just loving these double names to save some money on some jerseys.
That was going to be my next question. Over under on how many people mistakenly draft Brian Robinson Jr. instead of B. John Robinson in their fantasy drafts.
There'll be a few, and I'm sure there's some sneaky fuckers sending out trade offers with Brian Robinson included and hoping they don't look at the too deep at who they're trying to get. Trying to get Jahmyr Gibbs for B. Robinson, for example.
Yeah. Don't be that guy. Don't be that person. Right, let's have a look then into the odds for the Falcons. Again, 7.5. This number is going to be very prevalent for win total for the NFC South teams. Over to 7.5, 6-5 the over, under 4 and 6. Where do you have the Falcons? Where do you think the Falcons are going to end up?
I have them taking the under. I have them at 4-13. I just think there's too many quarterback questions and there's too much reliance on them big name skill players. If it all clicks, obviously, they're a division winner, but I just have some real doubts. I think they're another year away of a rebuild. So, I have them at 4 wins. So, I obviously have them going under 7.5.
Joe?
Yeah, I think the Falcons are a tricky team because I also can see Kevin Stefanski winning his third head coach of the year as well. It just feels like that's with their. But I'm probably going to go under as well. I think similar to Byron. I think they haven't done enough this offseason. They've obviously paid their guys, but the quarterback is such a not a great situation. I don't see even just coming out like being superstars or being even top 10 quarterbacks. So I think they're going to struggle after probably like 5 or 6 wins. They're probably going to run to help Kevin Stefanski, optimism for next year and get the 8th pick in a 2027 draft.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I'm there. I think I'm under as well. I just can't see a way where they've improved or done enough. I know they're 8-9 last year, but I think Kevin Stefanski is a big upgrade coach, but I think I'm just sort of struggling while there's still so many questions, particularly at the most important position. So we will see. But let's have a look then at the odds to make the playoffs. They're just short of 3-1 to make the playoffs. Heavily odds on to not make the playoffs at 10-37 or 37-10 on. It's a funny number that got changed to Bet365 when I looked earlier today. And then to win the division, you can get them just short 4-1. 15-4 to win the NFC South, 45-1 to win the NFC, and 100-1 to be your Super Bowl 61 champions. Anything interesting you there, chaps?
No.
That's okay, right?
Yeah, my other thing is like any of these division winners, like the odds are so pretty good for like each team. So if you don't mind them, it's like I wouldn't be shocked if they won their division just with how the other teams are.
Yeah, they are the fourth. They are the rank outsider, but the price between them and the favourite for the division is not too big of a difference. 15-4 is probably the most open division, I guess, in football in 2026, probably. We'll find that out through our previews. But on to the winners of the division last year. Feels very strange to say that. Carolina Panthers. They went 8-9, and thanks to an Atlanta Falcons win over the New Orleans Saints in Week 18, that helped them secure the division. They fell, almost upsetting the Rams as I think they were 14-point underdogs, maybe 10-point underdogs at home to the Rams. Probably should have won the game. 31-34, they fell against the LA Rams. Ranked 27th in scoring offense, 15th in scoring defense. Certainly a year of progression for the Panthers. What did you make then of the 2025 Carolina Panthers season?
Like you said, it's definitely progression. But I think the number that stands out there, again, is offense, 27th in points scored. Tyrone McMillan came in and I think was a hit as a rookie. Obviously, won Offensive Rookie of the Year, 1,000 yards receiver. Rico Dowdle had his moments as we backed him to be the top rusher a couple of weeks, and he smashed for us there. So 1,000-yard rusher. Jalen Coker, I think, came on pretty well down the stretch and had an incredible game in the wildcard game to the Rams. I know they lost, but he was incredible. But the question comes back again to the little lad with the behind center. Is Bryce Young the franchise quarterback? I wouldn't want to pay him like one right now. Some ups, some downs. It's tough to make a really coherent argument, I think, that he's a franchise quarterback right now. I think it's really unfair to write him off as well. I think he had a good close to the season, but I would just struggle putting my chips in on Bryce Young. And I think the team's done well in the 2025 offseason to strengthen really across the board. That defense was a wreck in 2024, and they improved to be 15th in points in 2025. They stopped being such a sieve to the running game, especially. Jesse Horn had a great year. I think he had 5 interceptions, which I'm just going to shout out here. That was one of Joe's bets of last year for him to have 2 or more, and he got 5. So incredible shout for Joe last year on our NFC South preview. I was doing a little research of how we did last year, and that was definitely worth a shout. And again, one of the premier cornerbacks in the league. He got paid like he should. But like I say, ultimately, while that question still lingers of do you have a franchise quarterback, I just struggle to see the ceiling, and I think that was kind of the case last year. I was delighted they won because I thought they were like spunky and put like a bit of fight together. I like Dave Canales as a coach, but like the Falcons in 2025, I don't want to say a total mess. I think things are going more in the right direction for Carolina, but it's that same big question mark at the biggest position with the littlest man.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, it was such a weird year when you just look at, like, they started off 0-2 losing to the Cardinals, like one of the only teams like lose to them. Then they end up being the Cowboys, they beat the Packers, they beat the Falcons early on 30-0, they beat the Rams. It's just like, and they beat the Bucs, and then they have that terrible like loss where it's like such a disappointment at the end of the season where they lose but still get through. It was just like typical NFC South. So you always see like a sparkle, and I feel like Bryce Young's done this enough each year to keep him to be like, he could be where it's like, he has a few games, you're like, okay, he could be the guy. And then he has 2 games where you're like, yeah, he's probably like a backup, maybe like a bridge starter at best. So it's such a weird team. And yeah, I think they're in a hopeful position in terms of paying him. And obviously that's not this year, maybe it'll be next year, but yeah, not fun for them. But like you said, I do like the head coach. I do like what they're building around them, what they've done. And at least they've made a step last year. It's now, can you go from a feisty team winning 8 and 9, winning your division NFC South? And then can you actually be contenders, do what the Bucs did, like win this NFC South again and actually win some playoff games? That's where I don't know if they can make that step.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure January the Panthers picked up Bryce Young's 5th-year option. So then they've got him at 2027 for pretty much similar money, $26.5 million. So maybe he's got kind of this then period to do it. I mean, I don't know if you can go into that 5th-year option year not knowing, I suppose, because you've not known for so long, but certainly did progress, seemed to work. And we saw progress with Dave Canales. And I suppose we'll see what 2026 brings. Let's get into 2026 then. Some of the key headlines for the Carolina Panthers. The pass rush gets clause. Jalen Phillips arrives as a free agency splash signing on a 4-year, $120 million contract after standout burst in Philly. Got traded near the deadline to the Eagles from the Dolphins. And funnily enough, that coincided with a huge upturn in the Eagles' defense as well. Then they ended up surging to be ranked number 1 defense, pretty much in line with Jalen Phillips arriving. Could be coincidence, but I think it was really, really impressive for the Eagles. What impact do you think he can make for this Panthers defense? Barry, you have to unmute yourself. I'm having to do so much editing to this.
My apologies. They had Nick Scotton as a rookie last year, so for the money they're paying Jalen Phillips, they'll certainly hope that he can come in and help bring him along. But that pass rush should be good this year. You know, obviously they've got Bobby Brown in there, who is a standout in the Derek Brown, not Bobby Brown. Standout D tackle. Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston's husband, I think, maybe.
Bad dude.
Yeah, might be a pass rusher though. But yeah, Nick Scotton as a rookie came on last year, so I think there's reason for optimism. I really like Jalen Phillips. I think he's done well, kind of wherever he's been, even if he hasn't had the gaudy numbers. But I think he can be a starting pass rusher and like maybe not an elite one. He's no Myles Garrett, obviously, but I think he can be someone who gets to double-digit sacks and could be a really useful piece in that defense, which I think has strengthened year on year. So yeah, a lot of money, but elite players don't get to free agency, so you have to overpay the good ones that do. So I think he's a good player, and that is good enough to be a starter for the Panthers. So I think a big improvement on what they had.
Yeah, I would say the Panthers do have a player called Bobby Brown at nose tackle. Bobby Brown the third. So there you go. They've got the Brown boys up front, big guys. But yeah, I agree. I think you could have a obviously when you think about the Eagles, you think about the defensive tackles, what they had dominating games. And I think he's going to be working with a similar kind of a team who can certainly get the push. And then he can roll up with the sacks and whatnot. You said Nick Scott, and I think he had a decent first year, rookie year. In the league, I don't think I don't think he's going to be one of them like top talents, but he's going to be a good second piece. So I think getting Phillips in, and you think about what happened last year. Obviously, they tried to they spent all the money they were trying to get in. Well, I can't remember his name. The Patriots defensive tackle,
Milton Williams.
Milton Williams, there you go. It felt like the Panthers had him, and then the Patriots took him away, probably a little bit of money, so they didn't want that to happen again. Jalen Phillips was probably the clear edge, number one guy in the free agency, so why not just keep building on this, on their strength and keeping games, relatively low scoring, which I think will help that offense, especially how young they are there. So I think it's a great. Why not? Instead of wasting this money on not paying anyone, just go out there and it raises your floor. And he should certainly get some sack numbers there.
Excellent. Right. Headline number 2 for the Panthers. It's more than a Freeland. Panthers invest in quarterback protection to prevent busted blocks with first-round selection Monroe Freeland from Georgia. What do we make? You two just look completely just glazed over. What was wrong with that? Boston, more than a Freeland? No? Okay. Well, more than a Freeland wasn't even my bit.
Well, more than a Freeland's great. Boston is...
All right.
Anyway, you're bringing me qualities.
Hey, Monroe Freeland, anyway, out of Georgia. I think we talked about in the sort of pre-draft process of the expectation of where he might go, that maybe actually he could be the first tackle that went off the board. Didn't turn out to be the case. He sort of fell to the Panthers in the Panthers 19, I think, weren't they? So kind of fell to the Panthers there. But I think I was real happy to get Freeland kind of in that late teens pick when potentially we were saying he could go kind of top 8, top 10. Huge get in terms of, look, if Bryce Young is going to have success, you need to make sure he's protected, you need to make sure he's got time back there. And I think they've got potentially a linchpin of a left tackle that could be there for quite a long time, or a tackle that could be there for quite a long time, I should say. Yeah,
I think he will start on the right side, but I think, again, it's great to take these pieces when they fall to you. There's a lot of talk that they might go with the tight end, Kenyon Sadiq. But I think, you get the tackle there, great value. We talked earlier about Kyle Pitts being one of the highest paid tight ends in the league, and he's, getting 14, 15 million a year. Well, your top tackles don't. They get paid double, triple that. So maybe triple's pushing it, but double certainly. So if he can work out, I think it's just a no-brainer. And I think it's another thing that Dan Morgan's done since he got to Carolina is focus on building up that defense, especially in the trenches, and then solidifying the trenches on the offensive side of the ball as well. It's just really smart. If you can't, you're not going to win games with a bad offensive line, especially with an undersized quarterback. So, I think it just makes total sense. We'll see how he's utilized in year one, but I think he can play both sides. I think he'll start right tackle, but I think he can play both. So, I think it's a really, really good, really smart addition.
Excellent. Right, let's move on to headline number 3. Linebacker Lloyd levels up the D. Former Jaguars linebacker signs 3-year, $45 million deal after breakout season to bolster the pass rush ranks. I think that was the key thing for Devin Lloyd last year. He was used a lot more as sort of a pass rusher for the Jags, and he found success doing so. Again, he'd been, I think, up to that point, a disappointment, I think, for the Jaguars. I think that's fair. And then 2025 was certainly a much improved year for him in a slightly different role. Again, does this just tag on to the Jalen Phillips signing of really committing to kind of having pass rush options?
Yeah, I think so. And he might pass rush as well, but he's a really good coverage linebacker as well. He was Pro Bowler his first time last year. And these are the kind of additions that I love to see in free agency, where $15 million a year really isn't much, but it's because linebackers aren't paid enough in the league nowadays. So I think getting one of the best linebackers in the league as of last year for $15 million a year, I think is such a no-brainer. And again, it's position of need. The Panthers, touched on it a few times now. They always need to add on that defense, and I just think it's a really smart addition here. Get your, elite inside linebacker who can do a bit of everything in the building. I think it just makes total sense.
Yeah, and when you look at the whole depth of the team, like I think like the back end looking good. You mentioned JC Hall, Mike Jackson had a good year. You got Morig, who safety. Now they've improved like the linebackers, which I think was a weakness, and now they've got the defensive tackles and the edge rushers. That defense is like from back. They haven't really got like, I would say like a superstar. Maybe Jalen Phillips is close to that, but not like a huge superstar. But they've got no big weaknesses. On offense is similar. Like you mentioned, the offensive line's looking good. The wide receiver drafting Tet last year certainly helped. You've got that true number one now, and you've got player piece around him. And it's just all the quarterback. Like if you had it like a top 10 quarterback with this level of depth chart, you'd be thinking, well, these should be easily be favorites to win this division. So I like what they've done. They've improved where they need to be. It feels like they've just raised the floor, where it feels like, we just talked about the Falcons, where it feels like the floor's lowered, but it feels like the Panthers' floor has risen, and it's really where where Bryce takes them is how high they can get, because I just like what everything they've done in terms of getting the players in and just spending the money and getting solid players.
Excellent. And our final headline for the Carolina Panthers, Idzik hopes to imprint ID on offense. OC takes over play calling duties. How will Panthers offense evolve in 26? So Dave Canales was called the plays for the first 2 years he's been there. Handed that job over. How do you expect this then to be different? What we're expecting to see out of a Panthers offense now with a different play caller?
I'm not sure how much will change, really. I think one of the hard things with, again, Bryce Young is that you do have to call a particular kind of game style. Same way that the Saints did with Drew Brees all them years. Like, you are limited in certain aspects because you can't call every play and every pass that you'd like to out of every formation. So I think there is a little limitation there. I think, he's already been in the building. It's just taken over play calling. If that frees Canales up to do more across the board, then I think that's a good thing. But I think, we've seen this in Detroit last year after Ben Johnson left. I don't know who Brad Jones is. Ben Johnson left. That they fired John Morton midway through the season. Dan Campbell took over play calling, and now they've got Drew Petzing as play caller. And I think if that doesn't go well, Dan Campbell will take over play calling again. And I think that's kind of what we might have here. Like, if things don't go great, well, Dave Canales is still there. Like, I wouldn't be stunned if it ends up back on Dave Canales' play ultimately. I don't know what much of Brad Idzik, so like I can't say like, oh yeah, he's got a really good scheme. His main work in the NFL has been with the Panthers under Dave Canales. So like, I don't envision much changing scheme-wise, but having Canales there is like, if things go wrong, I think that's just really helpful.
That was going to be my exact point. It's like, I'm just waiting for the headline. Okay, but over under week 7, Dave Canales takes over the calling. What were you saying?
Yeah, that's a good line. Strong line.
I'll have faith in Idzik. I think you keep it all season.
Okay.
I'm not putting money on that. Just my reputation.
Well, let's go then to, I suppose, key ins and outs. We talked about, obviously, a couple of them there. Kenny Pickett, he could be your top 10 quarterback, maybe. He could be the answer. No, definitely not. Any kind of mentioned...
I was going to say one addition I was going to mention, which I haven't put on there, is they got Rasheed Walker as well from the Packers at left tackle. Obviously, they'll probably fill in for one new, if I can speak out, who got injured in that Rams game. We'll see if he's going to be fit for this year. But drafting Freeland, I think the right tackle who's already there, I think they're paying like the top 5, Taylor Morton. They paid Robert Hunt a lot of money, but now they just get like a lot of depth pieces because they felt like they had a few injuries. So I do like that that addition of just giving a 1-year contract to Rasheed Walker. See if he can help them this year, and then figure out contract long term later on.
Yeah, and just you mentioned Rico Dowdle's had a spurt of really, really good performances. He's left, he was in and out just for the 1 year. He's gone to rejoin Mike McCarthy, I guess, in Pittsburgh. So they've got Juba Hubbard, who, again, struggled with kind of splitting the work, and who had a really good 24, but then kind of struggled. And after that, they've got Jonathan Brooks, who's had the real knee injuries. Is this a problem area for the Panthers? Kind of not maybe getting depth in the running back room and potentially not being able to run the football effectively?
Well, they got AJ Dillon they brought in, but again, full of injuries. You just hope for Hubbard. You got Trevor. It's not ETN, isn't it? I wasn't here for the Saints part. How do you say it, Paul?
A-Chain. I think it's like A-Chain.
Well, we haven't heard his take on it. We've heard his brother's take on it.
Well, that's true. Actually, he might prefer Etienne or Etienne. Who knows?
Could be like Jerome and Kevin Prince. One Boateng plays for Ghana, one plays for Germany. Different priorities.
There's a deep cut there for you. All the World Cups on. King Kevin Prince, Boateng, and Jerome Boateng. Fucking hell. Right. Anyway, let's move on to the draft. On that note, again, we've mentioned Freeland. Anyone else particularly standing out from you from a Panthers draft perspective? Anyone else we're looking forward to seeing, or that we think can kind of make be a difference maker for the Panthers in 2026?
It all seems obvious taking like the early pick guys, but I'm really interested to see Lee Hunter. Again, he was another one who was rumored to be back end of the first round kind of player. And I think, again, playing alongside Derek Brown will certainly help you ease into football because you're probably not going to be the focus. So I think that's, just a sensible sign-in. We talked about strengthening the trenches on both sides. I think that's just a good fit there. I don't really have much excitement, I will say, for Chris Brazzell. I didn't think he was much in college. He's 83rd overall, so I mean, it's not like you expect him to be an every down contributor, but the Panthers have had a very mixed, I would say, history of drafting wide receivers recently. You know, we've had Mingo and Leggett, who were real busts, like bad NFL players. But Jalen Coker's an undrafted player, and T-Mac have been real hits. So, you know, I could well be wrong on Chris Brazzell. Wait and see, but I don't think I'll be drafting him in any fantasy leagues this year.
Yeah, I think we probably want to watch probably Zach Wheatley, the safety out of Penn State, is probably one that could potentially usurp starters if you've got Nick Scott there, 31 as a safety. Maybe start getting. I think he'll probably play strong safety, but he probably be capable of playing free safety as well. Maybe pick up some snaps there as well. So it'll be interesting to see if he has much of an impact or gets much playing time.
Those kind of young players who come in as well, they can be so useful for sorting the Wheatley from the chaff as well. So,
you know what would have been really, really good? Like if you come out of Kansas or something, that would have been like perfect. It's just tied the whole gag together.
Well, just Q-watch. Just Q-watch.
Just Q-watch. Dear God. We've got another 7 of these today. Right, let's have a look at the odds for the Panthers. 7.5. That's the number for all these NFC South teams. Over to 7.5. 21 to 10 on the over. 20 to 27 on the under. Where have you got kind of the Panthers, guys?
I feel bad. I have them at 5 wins, and I like the roster, but the division is what I have every team in the division going 3-3 in division, just to make that clear, because they'll all win the home games, they'll all lose on the road. I don't know. They're all 7-5, you know, for a reason. But out of division, they play the NFC North and the AFC North. Well, outside of the Browns, I think they're worse than all of them teams. And they have a first-place schedule because they won the division. It's brutal. I like the Panthers roster more than I thought I would. I thought I would pick them to win the division early in the process. And then you look at the schedule and you're like, I don't know whether they're winning 8 games. It's really tough. If Bryce Young doesn't make a big step up, I don't think they go to 8 wins. So, yeah, I have them at 5, and I feel bad about it.
Joe?
Yeah. Like, in my head, when I first started, I was like, I think the Panthers are going to win the division. I think they're going to get to 9 or 10 wins. I'm liking this division. And then, just looking at that schedule when Byron's mentioned the divisions they're playing, but just becoming first, you've got the Eagles, Broncos, and Seattle. And it's just like you'd like, the Cardinals out of that, or the Giants, and you know what? I'm going to Bryson we trust. I'm going to say they get 9 wins, and no, you know what? I'm going to get 8 wins and then win the division again. 8 and 9. It's the South way.
Back to back, 8 and 9 division winning time.
And they're going to lose the last game, and someone's going to help them out for them to sneak in.
Yeah, just a shout, because I was looking at this line going, why isn't this 6.5? But it's 21 to 20, not 21 to 10 on the over. Not getting 2 to 1 on the over. It's 21 to 20.
That's a nice price for the over now that I look at it.
Yeah. I was going to say, why is this not 6.5 the line? But yeah, it's 7.5 correctly, and it's 21-20 to make the playoffs. 11-5, so just a shade over 2-1 to make the playoffs, and heavily odds on to not make playoffs. 1-3 on, basically 29-10 on. Excellent. So look at the odds first. 3-1 to win the division. So in and around where the rest of the prices are, Saints are just short of 3-1. Falcons are just short of 4-1. We'll see the Bucs in momentarily. 35-1 to win the NFC, and 75-1 to be your Super Bowl 61 champions, which I think is incredibly short. It should be a lot more than 75-1. I really do.
I genuinely not sure I'd back it if you added a 0.
Yeah. I suppose you can't just have. You've got to have some sort of step in the market, I guess, but it just seems wild. I guess they were a playoff team last year, but anyway. Shall we round off the episode with the Tampa Bay? But well, not. So we've got our
It'd
best
be weird
stats,
if we didn't, right?
Yeah, Tampa Bay. Yeah, no, we're just not going to talk about the Bucs. Should we just do that one episode and leave one team out and see if anybody notices first of all? Right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Remember the Titans. 2025 season recap for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 8-9. They missed 8-9. They missed out on a 5th straight division crown due to that weird ending of the season that we've already kind of talked about. First time they missed the playoffs since 2019. They were 18th in offensive scoring, 20th in defensive scoring. And yeah, again, this is another season that kind of felt like injuries were a big part to play, I think, of the Bucs season. Baker played hurt. Mike Evans and Godwin kind of both injured at the same time. Then Emeka Egbuka got hurt. It just kind of felt like they were kind of part. All teams are, but it felt like they really got kind of the thin end of the wedge last year, the Bucs injury wise.
Yeah, and even Baker and Egbuka just played through injuries, and we all know how hot Egbuka started last year. First 5 games of the season, he was like dynasty wide receiver 1. You can't buy him at any price. And then as he and Baker got injured, it was like, is he actually good at football? Nobody knows. So, yeah, rough end to the season. Bucky Irving missed a lot of it as well. It was just anything that could go wrong, it felt like kind of did go wrong, and they're still tied for the division last year. So, not as weird of a year, I think, as the Falcons had, because I think it was all really explainable. But, it was a drop in standards for the Bucs.
Yeah, it's weird. They were 6-2 at one point, and then they lost. They only won 2 the rest of the way. Obviously,
I think they were kind of like our team through like the first 9 weeks. We love talking about them. I christened him Make a Play Field because it was like every week Baker pulled something out the bag, and then it seemed to get to that like week 10, week 9, whatever number you said there. Like, it just kind of like all tanked there. I don't have the actual record of win losses, but like, it just kind of went in the bag there.
Yeah, it was nice. They had the bye, and then they lost to the Patriots, Bills, Rams, and you're like, okay, fair enough. Like. The 6-5 just pushed on to beat the Cardinals, but then they lose to the Saints, to the Falcons, to the Panthers, and the Dolphins 4 in a row, and then they beat the Panthers. So you can talk about the injuries, but they still had the players there, to perform. They just did that one. It was again another weird year for Todd Bowles kept his job. There was that weird will he want him? We'll talk about some of the players who have left and all this kind of weird going on, but it felt like there was some rumblings as well last year in terms of Baker, and that feels like it's carried on in this offseason. So it was a weird one for them where, when we said they were when they were 5-2, 6-2, we were like, oh, well, they're going to win this division fairly easily, and the Bucs could be one of the surprise teams for the Super Bowl, and then it went all downhill from there.
Yeah, how hot is the seat that Todd Bowles is currently sat on?
It's probably one of the hottest, right?
Any raise on that, Joe? Or?
I think it's never another year like last year, but I could just see them again, another team where they just sneak, they win this division, and they was like, well, we'll keep him on because he's been to the playoffs, how many times? Like 4 times out of the last 5. It's that like awkward one where doing that, again, another one in that mid-region where they're not good enough to win the Super Bowl, but they're not bad enough to sack the coach. But this year could be different in terms of the opposite way with some of the players that they've lost.
Yeah, I think it's one that flats to deceive because, I think I like the Bucs in terms of a lot of the players they've got and really enjoy Baker, all those things. But Bowles, I think, since he's taken over as head coach of the Bucs, I think he's pretty much ran at 500.
He's literally two games above 500 in 4 years.
it's just a sign of the division, of the strength of the division or weakness of the division, I guess, which is why they kind of managed to win for the last 5. Not necessarily it's because they've been good. Elements of that at times, but yeah, not all the way through. So yeah, I think it's a Scorchio seat at the minute. And yeah, I wonder if he'll make it through the year. Off-season headlines anyway, end of an era. We talked about a couple of people going already, but franchise legends, Mike Evans, Levante David, walk the plank and find new homes, because that's what you do when you walk the plank. Can Bucs cope with loss of veteran leadership? Yeah, obviously, it's not just the quality of the players, I think, as well. It's the experience, it's that leadership in the locker room. Just, can you kind of summarize how big a miss both these guys are going to be?
It's impossible to, really. I do think that they were smart in bringing in Alexander Loney from the Lions as a veteran linebacker to replace Levante David. Not exactly a like-for-like purely, but I think he is a leader. He's a very pumped-up player. You see him like boost his teammates around him all the time. And I do think, with Mike Evans, he probably is irreplaceable in terms of what he brought to the team and who he is as a leader. But I do think Chris Godwin is and has been since he got drafted really a really solid. He reminds me a bit of Egbuka, truthfully. As like that's what I love. Egbuka coming out, he was just pro ready. You know where he'll be. He knows the game. He does the dirty stuff. He does everything you kind of want. And maybe Godwin takes more of a leadership role. I don't know about on the field they'll miss Mike Evans as much as they will like the man, if that makes sense. Because I think he has struggled with his hamstrings the last couple of years. I think Jalen McMillan on limited work last year was pretty impressive. Same to end his rookie season. I think Egbuka, if fully fit, can be a wide receiver 1 in the league. I've already backed him. We had our way too early season bets. I backed him at 80-1 to be the offensive player of the year because just how hot he was to start last year when him and Baker were fit. So I think there's a ceiling there. Again, I think Mike Evans, you can kind of cope with the loss on the field. Same for Levante David, really. But it is off the field where you're going to have to just trust that the players that you've already had in place can be those leaders. Can Kalijah Kancey now as a veteran be a leader? Vita Vea has already been doing it. Tristan Wirfs now becomes like almost the face of the offense. With Baker Mayfield in a contract year, is that something where he now becomes like the leader of the team? I think they've got the people there, but it's a big change, obviously.
Yeah, it's hard. It's just so difficult to replace. And yeah.
But isn't this one of the weirdness with Mike Evans, obviously going to the 49ers and whatnot for less money and in a place where it gets taxed absolutely crazily compared to Tampa? Like, why did he leave? Like, what's up with that? He's moving somewhere next to a power station with his dodgy hamstrings. Is that a weirdness in terms of like, that's what I mean, like him and like with what's happening with Baker with his contract as well. Yeah. There's a reason. But I agree. I think with Mike, again, Egbuka, you've like replaced a number 1 wide receiver with a number 1 wide receiver if he stays fit. So I think Levante David in terms of leadership and that defense, I think that's irreplaceable. Someone else has to step up in terms of into that place. And he like ran that defense for Todd Bowles. Is someone going to be able to do that from the linebacker position? Because I think that is a big position for this defense.
Right. Next headline for the Bucs. Is bane of pass rush problems solved? Bucs keep the U's pass rush star in state by taking Ruben Bain Jr. in the first round. I thought I did quite well there. Anyway, Ruben Bain, what do we make of him? Obviously, kind of felt it was going to be a big story on draft night. Kind of, he sort of especially thought he fell. Never seen a person be more angry grabbing that cap in front of the mirror since they've been doing that at the NFL draft. He's got a big chip on his shoulder.
Big chip on his shoulder, little arms on the end of those shoulders. I think this is brilliant for the Bucs. The one thing they haven't had for a few years, they've had Vera and Kancey up the middle, but they haven't had a real pass rusher. And, we'll make all the jokes. I'll make all the jokes I like about his little arms, etc., etc. I would have been happy with Ruben Bain going to the Cowboys if they hadn't got Caleb Downs, So I think he's a real strong pass rusher to come in straight off the bat. And, he's one of the favorites for Defensive Rookie of the Year immediately. He looks very pissed off. He looks like he's going to hit the ground running. I think it's we talked about it with the Panthers, falling into your lap. I think this is exactly what happened with Ruben Bain. I don't think they could have thought he'd land with them at what number pick was it? 16 was it? I think it was, or
15. I think you went
15. Yeah. It just didn't seem in the cards really. So I think it's there. I won't be doing a Bain impression, but I was workshopping a little song for Bain. We all know Culture Beat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking like, Mr. Bain, I'm gonna sack you, something along those lines. So I might fashion it out by the time we get to the regular season, but I think
need some work.
It needs workshopping a bit more. Yeah.
Instead of calling me Mr. Raider, call me Mr. Book, something along those lines. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have a Culture Beat crossover event by week 1. So
nice, and that's the 90s dance classics segment of the show done as well. Was that a number 1? Did that get to number 1? I don't think it probably did it? Yeah.
Fact check us.
Yeah, well, you'll find out in September. It'll pop up during a preview week episode for sure. Headline number 3 then. Kenny G brings the sacks to the running back room. Kenneth Gainwell signs for him. Steelers on a 2-year, $14 million deal to give a dynamic option alongside Bucky Irving. Ended up having a real, it was such a big part of that Steelers offense last year, and that's primarily because it was quite turgid. But he did have a really good season. Built that kind of a really, really good connection with Rodgers and produced, a really, really solid season production-wise. What's he offering to the Bucs then with that backfield they've already got of sort of Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, who had the beast of a game last year against the Bills?
I mean, pass catching, I think, primarily is what we should expect. Last year, Kenneth Gainwell had the 5th most receiving yards at the running back position behind CMC, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane. I mean, these guys are all pretty good players. Then Kenneth Gainwell, 486 receiving yards in the season. He had one of the catches of the season as well. Remember when he fell over and still caught the ball? Incredible. I didn't know Gainwell had it in his locker, I will say. Rashad White, obviously, released, ended up in Washington. Bucky Irving's got some weird, questionable injury stuff going on this offseason that was linked to last season. Todd Bowles said he should be ready by the fall. Well, he better be, because that's when football's been played, Todd. So I certainly hope he's ready to go. But I think Gainwell's just like a really solid, does everything really well. And like we've seen with the receiving work last year, if quick checkdowns become part of your game, Kenneth Gainwell's going to excel there. So, I think between him, Sean Tucker, and Bucky Irving, I think that's an okay running back room. I don't think you've got one who's like, I don't think you'd want any of them as your running back 1 in fantasy. But I think as a room, it should work pretty well.
Excellent. Right. Headline number 4, our final one. Contract year for Baker. Will he get a bag? Buccaneers have a big decision to make on 31-year-old signal caller. Do they stick or twist? I think they're in a tough spot. Similar to like the Panthers are in a tough spot.
Well,
what do you do?
That was literally what I was thinking when we were talking the Panthers earlier, and we're talking Dave Canales. And who did Dave Canales have such great success with? Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay when he was the offensive coordinator. And I was thinking, you know what? If Dan Morgan gets on the phone to Jason Light and says, "Hey, you take Bryce Young, we'll take Baker Mayfield, we'll take the older player on a contract year. You've got the 5th-year option and this year with Bryce." Who says no?
It's very, if we were doing the GM trades conversations again, that would be very, very interesting one to thrash out.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting paid. I think he's going to go in as a contract, and I don't know if he's got the no tag clause in there. I don't think he will have, because I don't think he had the leverage to insert it when he signed with the Bucs. So I think he's going to be on a year-to-year contract right now, and if he's good, he'll get tagged if they can't work out a long-term deal. I don't think he's getting signed this offseason, though, because I think he would have done it already.
Yeah, I think they should give him like a 3-year deal where they can probably get out the 3rd year. Just get it over and done with, because the issue they're going to have, they're good enough to be around 8 and 9. So they're never going to be in position to be able to draft one of these quarterbacks who, are in the top 5, top 10. They're always going to have to, gamble on a Kenny Pickett kind of quarterback in that mid-teens, maybe in the 20s, if they win the division. they're going to be 19th, 18th in terms of picking. So, what else is there to get? You've seen teams. I can't remember. I think they're the only team I can think of who got a free agency kind of quarterback who's actually gone to the playoffs and had success. The players probably up Sam Darnold, obviously, but you need a hell of a team around in order to do that. So I think they should pay him. But
that was my entire premise, exactly what you've just said, of why Ty Simpson was my bet to go to the Bucs, because he's maybe a top first round talent who hasn't got enough experience. If he gets to 15, maybe they'll take this shot, and then he goes 13. That was not in my realm of possibilities. It was whether the Bucs would say yes or not. And that option got taken away from them, obviously. So I think it's wild. It's really weird to go into a year of your quarterback under a 1-year deal. So very interesting to see how it plays. What do you think they'll do, Paul?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think there's probably too many options in the draft next year, I think, in the 2027 draft. And I think obviously, unless he plays out of his skin, unless he kind of matches what he did in 2024, I don't think they're going to commit to him. I think they might just go the draft route. Jalen Daniels is a interesting proposition, undrafted. But we got to speak, again, just plug in what we managed to do. We got to speak to his former quarterback coach at Kansas as part of the Union Jack Classic stuff. Very interesting insights. He's a very experienced starter from the Big 12, kind of through, 1 year by injury, but pretty much a 4-year starter. And I don't know, it's been a while since we had an undrafted free agent story, but I don't know, if it's not going well, and the indication will be quite clear early on. If you don't have a great start to the season, you're probably not going to commit to Baker. And do you see what you've got in others? I don't know. I just think it's a very, very tricky situation to balance, because it could turn very sour very quickly for what has been a productive stint in Tampa for Baker.
But they are
what was coming out of.
Yeah, they are in a division though. Are they ever going to be out of it? So are you ever going to risk putting in a young guy when you're like, oh, we're 2 games away from, or even we might be 2 games under 500, but we're only a game away from winning the division. So that's the tricky part they have as well. Where I think they're going to have to keep them in, because they're going to be in unless they have an absolute disaster kind of year. Yeah,
cool. Right, yeah. Let's have a look then at ins and outs. Alex Anzalone, we've already touched upon. Kenneth Gainwell, we've mentioned. And the losses that we've made. Anyone else, sort of, whether in or out, that you think is going to be a big impact or a big, I suppose, miss for the Bucs?
They did bring in Al-Quadin Mohammed from the Lions, who ended up getting double-digit sacks, I believe, last year. So again, I think could be a useful piece alongside Robinson and Ruben Bain, as we already discussed, because that is the one thing that's killed these Todd Bowles defenses. He blitzes like hell, but it's because he has to, because he doesn't have an edge rusher, or he doesn't have anybody to get to the passer. Mohammed, obviously, it was a real outstanding year for him, and it was a real out of nowhere year, but he's shown he can do it. So, if he can get to 7-8 sacks again, and Ruben Bain can hit the ground running as a rookie, I think those two together could be a big addition.
Excellent. And then the draft, we've touched on Ruben Bain Jr. out of Miami. Which again, we're interested to see whether the fall was right or not, whether those arms just are too small to be an edge rusher in the NFL. There's not Hurst is another interesting obviously proposition. So they've done pretty well to get kind of productive snaps out of wide receivers they've drafted. And Ted Hurst out of Georgia State is one that certainly intrigues me. I think he could be somebody that works well with Baker. He's coming off a 1,000-yard season for Georgia State last year. I think he's 6'5", he's big, 6'3", he's a big rangy receiver, quite slender, quite skinny. But I think he could provide a good complementary piece to Egbuka, McMillan, to Chris Godwin as well. I think it just kind of could round out the room nicely. And as a 3rd-round pick, you'd expect him certainly to be there come September. Any other shouts from a draft perspective for the Bucs?
Just another trotter in the league. It's just go with this. Just another trotter in the league. So it's Josiah Trotter, linebacker. He's the son of Jeremiah Trotter, and obviously the brother of Jeremiah Cropper Jr. So if his genes have followed through, it should be a good linebacker and one for the future to take that spot in Tampa Bay. So I'm interested if how much he'll play this year and what he can contribute.
And I for one hope he hasn't followed through in his genes, for sure.
We'll all be in there. And if it doesn't work out on the field for him, he can also follow his British uncle into independent trading. So something to look forward to.
90s dance and Holyfield's analysis. This is bush. Excellent. Right, let's have a look at the odds then. I think just from you tell the tone of us is that we're pretty down on Tampa, but let's have a look at the odds. When it wants to show 8.5 wins for the Bucs. They're the one. They buck the trend from 7.5. That's the over-under line. Evens money. Plus 100 for over, 10 to 13 to odds on for under. What have you got at the bottom? I'm real low on the bottom. I think I got them at I think when I first ran it, I had them at 4 wins, but I think I got some more reasonable 6. But wherever you go, where did you guys get with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I have them at a reasonable 6 and 11. So exactly the same.
Joe?
Yeah, I probably got under as well. 8.5. Again, they're going to finish 8 and 9. All of them's going to finish on 8 and 9, something crazy like that. So, having that extra one. I think it should be a tight division. They've got a tough schedule, I think, the NFC South this year. So, I think it's going to be a struggle for all of them. So, I feel like we're going under on everyone. Under there.
5 to 4 to make the playoffs. 5 to 8 or 8 to 5 on to not make the playoffs. 7 to 4 to win the division. They are the favourites to win the NFC South, which I'm still finding very strange. 22 to 1 to win the NFC and 50 to 1 to be your Super Bowl 61 champions. Any takers there?
Not here, no.
I think again, having a division odds, which is not a crazy price, then if you like the Bucs, just go for that division. I think it's a division where you'll make money out of it if you manage to hit compared to some of the other divisions where they're mildly odds on.
Okay, let's move on. So rounding off the episode is our best bets. So we pick one team focused, one player focused, or prop for the division that we're previewing. We had 26 successful featured bets that came out of these division previews last year, or just in general, I should say, not specifically division previews, but 26 features that were successful. Usually, obviously, quite pricey as well. So I'll go first. And mine, I've got 2 very Saints-orientated bets. Etienne, Travis Etienne, however you were going with it. Give me 1,000 plus rushing yards. The over-under is 870 something. I think he's going to get the bulk of that work. I think they're going to keep Kamara, probably specifically Kamara in the passing game more than anything I'd have thought. So I think Etienne's going to get more of obviously that rushing workload. And it's off the back of 1,000 yards. I think he's 3 out of 4 years, 1,000 yards. So for the Jags, that Saints offensive line is very, very good. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to be able to open up plenty of lanes for him. And I think Kellen Moore would. I think Kellen Moore has moved his kind of offensive philosophy a little bit. He has certainly much more balance than he was maybe when he started as a coordinator in Dallas when he was very pass happy. I think he's become a lot more balanced. So, give me ETN. And then just give me the Saints to win the division at 3 to 1. Obviously, we mentioned earlier, it's 13 to 5 now, just for transparency purposes. But I took this a while ago. I think it's probably 3rd or 4th different show I've mentioned. I'm on this bet. I love it. I just think they are going to be a cut above. Hard saying that in the NFC South because what is a cut above? But marginally better than the rest. And I think they can get. I think they could maybe get 10. Maybe they could get 10 wins, but they're going to have a very strong in-division record to do that. I think, given the balance of the schedules. But I like it at 3 to 1. Give me the Saints to win the NFC South. Byron.
Another Saint is going over 1,000 yards as well. Jordan Tyson, 94, just over 2 to 1, 1,000 plus receiving yards. I think he's electric. He's my favorite receiver in this draft class. I think it's a really good scheme fit. The Saints ran the 10th most plays on offense last year. Calamura is a real fast play caller, wants to play lots of plays. I think that'll keep up this year. Olave is obviously the one, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they can either both get over 1,000 or Tyson can outwork him on actual receiving yards, even if it's not receptions. So I think at better than 2-1. I really like Jordan Tyson plus 1,000 receiving yards. And then I have the Saints and Bucs to be the top two teams in any order in this division at 27-10. I also like the Saints at 3-1, and I also have them for 10 wins. So, I think the Panthers schedule and everything that's going on in Atlanta, I think the Saints and the Bucs are a bit of a cut above the other two. Right now, I think the Saints are a little bit above the Bucs, but I think them two together at 27-10, I think is a nice price. So those are my two bets. And Joe, to finish us off.
Yes, so my first one is Bijan Robinson to get 600 plus receiving yards. So I think he's over. That was basically his over. Under. I just think with the two quarterbacks they've got, especially, I think if Tua plays quite a lot, there's a lot of dink and dunk and a lot of getting the ball out quickly. So I think he could get the ball fairly often. Last year he got 820 yards. So first two it was in the 400s, and then he doubled it to 820. So I think he's going to do that, something similar. And just with how Bijan plays, he can get 100 of them just in one game. He's just that's such a dynamic player, and he can do it also. I think Bijan is 600 plus receiving yards, just under evens. And then finally, similar to Byron's, but I've just swapped out the Bucs for the Panthers. Saints Panthers top two any order at 92, so slightly better odds. I just like the Panthers team as a whole. I feel like the Bucs can. I think it's going to be very tight, as I've said, and it could be they've all got the same record, and it just depends on the head-to-head is who's top two. But I do like the 92 there compared to.
Joe's really pulled in for this four-way tie, isn't he, in the NFC South? Like,
if it's going to be anywhere.
Yeah, and if it happens, get ready. We're putting out this. These clips everywhere to say that, because the odds on that would be ridiculous, I'm guessing.
I'm sure you'll have to ask for it, but yes, it would be. Excellent. Those are our best bets. Make sure, again, we'll be collating them all through our division preview series. You'll see them. Probably we'll share them a bit more when we get closer to the start of the season. But 26 futures winners last year, mix of great prices. So, on top of the nearly 300 regular season plus playoff bets that we hit over the course of the 2025 season. So always pays to listen to Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. That is the NFC South preview done in the books. 1 down, 7 to go. NFC North next. We've got fantastic guests joining us for that. Ben Isaacs from the Nat Coombs Show, author of obviously a tremendous book, The American Football Revolution, How Britain Fell in Love with the NFL. He's a big Chicago Bears fan, so that's going to be our focus for the NFC North. In the meantime, there's plenty of other stuff. If you've not been and watched it already, we've had some great interviews. Interview with Patrick Fisher-Butler, kicker from Delaware State, one of the UK guys flying the flag and making waves in the college game. That was out last week, so go give that a listen as well. And there'll be more and more stuff. But come with us for the rest of the division preview series. Follow Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, and then you can catch us at GTW_GTC on everything else, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you next week.